Howdy folks, Trump and Media back here. I went ahead and charted some data from the Arizona elections, the presidential elections and gubernatorial elections from 2016, 2018, 2020, and 2022, because I thought there were some interesting comparisons to be made. Here on the left, you can see the primary versus the general elections in those years. As you can see, the primary numbers have a consistent trend here. 624,000 2016. That was Trump versus Hillary. So this would have been the primary that Trump won here in 2016. And then in the 2018 governor election with Doug Ducey, the people that showed up to the Republican primary was a little bit higher. There wasn't a primary in 2020 because Donald Trump was the incumbent. And then this is actually really interesting. In 2022, in the primary, a lot more people showed up for the Republican primary, and Kari Lake won that primary, of course. Then for the general election, you'll see here, this is also consistent. In addition, the turnout in the general election was consistently double of what turned out in the primary in 2016 for the presidential, and then in 2018 for the governor. So surprisingly enough, a decent more amount of people showed up to vote for Doug Ducey than voted for Trump in 2016. Then, as you can see, in the 2020 election, far more people showed up to vote for Trump. We're now at 1.66 million. And then, for whatever reason, this is a little weird to me, but despite such a significant higher turnout in the Republican primary, only half, or a 50% increase, showed up to vote Republican for Kari Lake in the governor race. So in 2016 and 2018, you had a very consistent increase in turnout at double the primary number, 100%. And then for 2022 is almost exactly half of that. So that's quite a difference. If you look over here at the Democrat primary numbers, the trend amongst the primaries is very similar to the Republicans in that it's pretty level here, not a large increase or decrease, a little bit of an increase. These numbers are a little lower, which you'll see a better contrast on the next chart that I'll have up in a minute. But so here you can see, 400,000, 500,000, 600,000. This is the race with Hillary and Trump. As you can see here, the Democrats had a significant difference between the people that showed up for the primary and the people that showed up for the general. She received 1.16 million votes. It's less than Trump by about 90,000. But this is a 150% increase in the primary compared to like the Republicans' 100% increase. So that's 50% more than show up for their primary for whatever reason. Apparently what this reflects is that many more people that voted Democrat showed up for the general, despite not showing up for the primary, or I guess you could say independent. So, a lot of the independents will probably be reflected in the general as compared to the primary. And then here in the Doug Ducey race, this is kind of interesting because the difference between the people that showed up in the general as opposed to the primary is almost exactly the same as these Republicans at very close to 100%. So double the people that showed up for the primary showed up to vote Democrat in the general election. So those percentages are almost identical for Republicans and Democrats in 2018 for the governor election. And Doug Ducey won that election by a pretty significant amount, 335,000 votes. So that's a lot. And then in 2020, you had a little bit more people show up for the Democratic primary to vote for Biden as the presidential candidate. And what's really interesting is how there is a significant increase in the turnout for the general. So here you have almost 3 times the number of people showing up for the general election as opposed to the primary. This is a 273% increase. You can speculate what you want, I guess, on that, but this is nuts. So, despite only 613,000 showing up for the primary, double that amount of people that didn't show up for the primary were motivated enough, I guess, to go to the general election, where Biden barely inched out a victory over Trump by about 11,000 votes. And then in the 2022 election, Kari Lake versus Katie Hobbs, you see a little bit of a decline in the Democrat primary turnout, and again a significant increase in the Republican primary turnout. Very significant. This is by far the most significant difference in any of the primary numbers. But for whatever reason, Kari Lake only was able to increase that turnout by 50% on the general, and Katie Hobbs was able to pull out another 115%. So more than double that came to the primary voted for her in the general election. So this is significantly higher than in the Doug Ducey race, and a lot different than in the Republican difference here. And then if you look over here, I think this is kind of interesting with the total votes. And the primaries seem to have a pretty consistent trend everywhere. Just a little bit of an increase that show up for the primaries. Here you have the 2016 presidential election. It's pretty normal that not as many people are going to show up for the midterm. Then you have this very significant increase for the 2020 election. I mean, almost 1 million. I mean, it's 800,000 increase from 2016. What percentage would that be? I don't know, 20, somewhere between 20 and 25% increase. That's pretty significant. So everyone in the state came out to vote for that presidential election, apparently. And then for the following midterm race, that total number dropped all the way back down to almost what it was at the 2016 presidential election, which is not that far from that following midterm. So I don't know what happened to all these people here. I guess they all just stayed home or whatever. Despite, another thing to note is that in the middle here, in between each of these, is when they implemented mass mail-out ballots, ballot harvesting, ballot boxes, and all of that. So I think that's worth noting. But despite all of that and the increase in this 2020 general election or presidential election, not nearly as many people. The number dropped back down to as before. So, back here, there was no mail-out balloting. Here, there's the mass mail-out balloting, which you expect a huge increase in voter turnout, which there was. But then for some reason in the midterm race, despite them using the same methods, this total turnout dropped all the way back down to the same numbers that it did before they did that. So I find that interesting. And again, here you have 136% increase in the general from the primary, 105%. This one can't really be calculated because there was no Republican primary. And then over here, you have a significantly less. These are both over 100%, so this is before mail out. And then this one here has 78, 79% increase. There was a significant increase, somewhat significant increase in the primary turnout because this Republican number was so high. So you see here, 1.1 million, 1.16 million, these are pretty close. Ironically enough, more people turned out for the primary in 2018, but even though more people turned out in the primary in 2018, not as many people showed up to the general, which, I mean, I guess that could be normal since, it was a midterm election. But on this one, despite the fact that there was such an increase in the primary turnout, there was a significantly less and smaller number in the increase on the general election. That's strange. Now this other chart I want to look at only compares the Republicans directly to the Democrats. So if you look at these primary numbers, these light red, these light blues, these are the primaries. And you'll notice that there's a pretty steady trend here with the Republicans being about, I'm not sure what percentage that is, but you can see this is 624, 655. This is 466, 505. It's a pretty consistent difference. And even until you get here, there's an increase on both of them. But as you can see, the Republicans tend to turn out, the same amount above the Democrats each time. And then over here, this increase is reflected in the general results. So, more Republicans turned out for the primary, more Republicans voted for the Republican candidate in the general. This is Trump versus Hillary right here. And then you have the same sort of pattern in the governor election, where you have, a decent amount more showing up for the Republican primary. And I think this is probably a little bit bigger of a percentage in the general, so but still over the Democrats. So Republicans have more turnout for the primary. Republicans win the 2018 Doug Ducey governor race. And then this is where it gets a little strange. So in 2020, this is after the mail-out ballots and the ballot harvesting and the drop boxes. And now you still have the increase in Republican votes. This is Trump versus Biden. And somehow Biden has motivated a massive amount of voters that were not interested in the primary to vote in the general to barely inch out a victory over Trump with about 11,000 votes. And as you can see here, as we come down to 2022, despite these steady trends here in the primaries, the same exact result happened in 2022. You have Katie Hobbs motivating a significant amount more than the Republicans from the primary to barely inch out a lead on Kari Lake. So speculate what you want from these numbers. I have no opinion, but I just find these trends very interesting. So thank you for watching, and have a good day.